Welcome to the Rugby Bits podcast. We're here after an epic weekend of URC semi-finals. The Bulls are traveling to Dublin to face Leinster in the clash between number one and number two team in the URC. The two teams that haven't won the URC yet, we're going to have our fourth new champion. We're going to talk about the URC semi-finals, the Super Rugby knockouts, and I'm sure Shaun has a few thoughts about that awesome the format there, the Premiership, the top 14, and all the competitions that have shaken out. I'm Thala. I'm joined by Shaun today. Shaun, I think let's just get the rant out of the way with Super Rugby just for a few minutes because I do want to give you a chance just to let rip. So the number one team, the Chiefs, lose their qualifier against the Blues. And the reward for the Chiefs for losing is that they still host their semi-final against the Brumbies. But the only consequence is that they do lose the right to host the final. I think Brumbies fans must be especially mad because they won a qualifier or a knockout game, but they're still the ones traveling away for the semi-final.
What a crock of shit. What a crock of shit. It is. You've explained it so well. Like anyone who's listening and watching this for the first time will just be like, what? And they're busy Googling it right now to find out, like, what is this rubbish? Firstly, how did they lose that game? That's probably something that needs to be discussed because
Yeah.
they lost. They were never in a space to lose it. I couldn't watch the whole game. I had to leave, but when I left, they were in good space. And then I saw a message somewhere going, "How did they lose it?" And I was like, "Nah, it's a load of rubbish. Someone's pulling my leg." But anyway, this system is so ridiculously flawed. And as I said last week, the only thing that can be said about it is like, awesome, well, nice try. Nice try. You did something new, but it's terrible. Like, I mean, listen, the whole thing's flawed, but the fact that they lose and then they get to host the semifinals even worse. They should not be hosting. So like, it's crap. It's rubbish. But they'll lose this week and then they'll get another freebie into the final. So that's okay.
Yeah. Like you said, Shaun, last week, I think Leinster's going to be talking to Martin Ayani and just say, hey, can we have something similar for us here in the URC?
100%. 100%.
Yeah, but let's get to the actual rugby. We'll start with the match in Pretoria, the Bulls beating the Sharks 25 points to 13 in I think, typically high octane, but a bit mental South African derby between the two sides. Some obviously magic moments, some crazy moments as well. I think the main thing that stood out for me, Shaun, I'd like to hear from your side, is the Bulls can be absolutely irresistible at times. They can also let you in. But unfortunately for the Sharks, we've talked about how inconsistent they can be and how they can let you in or how they can sort of turn it up for 20 minutes. The problem was they didn't score enough points when they were on top of the Bulls. And the Bulls sort of opened the door for them at the end of the first half, started the second half of the two yellow cards, and the Sharks weren't able to take advantage.
Yeah, so firstly, congrats on making another final. You guys deserve it big time. The frustrating thing out of this is the Sharks actually played rugby. So this whole season they haven't played rugby and they've won. And now there were moments where they really played decent rugby. Makazole Mapimpi's in ridiculous form. He's cooking. Ethan Hooker's cooking. I thought that the Sharks locks did exceptionally well. They were very impressive. The disappointing part of it was the Sharks scrum. And there's a lot of people saying, oh, how are these guys going to be Springboks? They've lost it. Get rid of them. Oh, it's a nothing conversation for me. It's very evident that things change when they play for the Springboks or the prep or the mental game, whatever. It was, yeah, it was upsetting. The Sharks not hitting their straps this season and playing good rugby is the reason why they didn't score when they were on top of the Bulls. Because it's a confidence thing. It's a knowing certain things. They were playing good rugby, but then when the push came to shove, there was a bit of snatching. There was some bad decision making, and unfortunately, that comes with time in the saddle. The other thing was Lukhanyo been seeing a lot of shit on socials about him. He hasn't had a great season. His comeback from knee injuries not really been great, and he didn't have a good game. The truth is, I don't think anyone can tell me the last time Lukhanyo had a bad game. I don't think anyone can. So I think everyone can just, put the brakes on. He was there, Thala, you and I spoke about things about like why won't coaches make changes, like big changes in game,
Yeah.
like at times like that. Like I would have even gone as far as actually saying, "Cool, put Hooker at 13 and put Lukhanyo on the wing. You can rotate them on defense if you want or whatever, but just change something up." So yeah, I like that was the thing. The Sharks they played good enough that if they'd won that game, you would have been like, "Oh, Leinster, if they lift another level or two, they could really perform well against Leinster." But the truth is the Bulls didn't let them. The Bulls were impressive. The Bulls had a mission. The Bulls played like they played to their game plan. They delivered in spaces they need to deliver, and they had probably two individuals that really were just head and shoulders above themselves and everyone on the day, and that was Harold Forster and Sebastian de Klerk. I just de Klerk was incredible. He brought things in that game that I didn't realize were possible for him. That kick pass was insane. That you don't do something like that by accident. You don't pick up a ball where you do run, see it, and then execute it like that by accident. So that kid's clearly got skills. And I thought Harold Foster was brilliant just because he took Andre Esthuizen down a notch. Esthuizen still had a good game, but he wasn't where you expect him to be. So yeah, well done to the Bulls. If we're very honest, the Bulls were the better side through the season, and so were Leinster, and it is a fitting final. And I think a lot of people are writing the Bulls off because they're talking about the travel and they're talking about how the Bulls don't perform well when they travel, when they did in the most recent travel they did. And all of this, like there's so much other stuff to deal with. I think the Bulls have a lot better chance than many give them credit for. And they're going to be up against a proper Leinster side, but the nerves are there. It's rare air for both of them.
Yeah. Look, I think the big stat of the game is Bulls had 722 entries, got 3.1 points per 22 entry, which is pretty much as good as you can get. Like
That is brilliant.
you say you get into the 22, you get yourself at least a penalty. Obviously, it was try sometimes, not tries other times, but that's what you try to aim for. Sharks, 12 entries, 0.8 points scored. I think
Oh,
that basically sort of sums up the match. And then on the other side is the dominant tackle. So the Bulls had 15 dominant tackles to 7. Obviously, they tackled almost more than double than what the Sharks did. But I think it does show that, look, the Bulls had just an epic defensive performance on Saturday. I think, yeah, like players like, for me, for the Bulls, players like Cobus Wiese really stood up. I think
oh, so
Wiese,
good, eh?
not that I was doubting if he was a Springbok. I think he's played really well this season. I think he's been probably the best tight head lock outside of Eben Etzebeth. But geez, on Saturday, when it was a game where it felt like a lot of the Springbok or Springbok level players were kind of standing up, he was there. He was really making an impact. Obviously, he created the second try as well. So he was just epic in that battle. Ron Ukia was as busy as he usually is. Marcel Coetzee was contributing. We talked about Harold Forster. So I think Jay van Heerden also. So it is such a big sort of key for the Bulls that 4 to 8 need to perform as well as possible. So they did that in defense. They kicked, quite well. I think, of course, them being back helped, just to help
Big
bring a
time.
bit more force to the kicking game. Leroux was quite judicious with his boot, and just making the Sharks have to attack from deep. Because yes, someone like Mapimpi and Hooker, they got chances from deep, but it was chances from deep as well. So it was them having to run from their 22 or from their 10-meter line instead of, they're in the 22 of the Bulls already. They have a lot of space to make up. So I think the Bulls really played the game quite well and quite wisely for a a derby semi-final. Like they kind of try to let as much of the steam out of the game as quick as possible and gone. I mean, apart from the first 10 minutes, though, I just want to talk about that, Shaun, because it just felt like the Bulls backline all took crazy pills because it was the Sharks and the Bulls 22. The Bulls scrum absolutely destroyed the Sharks in that first scrum. Then the Bulls just were giving the ball away. So it was LaRue with a few knock-ons and forward passes. David Creel just threw an intercept straight to Hooker for that disallowed try for the offsides. And it was just like from a tight head, like an actual tight head scrum. And it's just like, okay, do the Bulls know they're playing a semi-final? They're not, this is not the URC mid-rounds in February. Like, this is the real thing. So, yeah, and I mean, the yellow cards were quite stupid as well. But yeah, I think, like you said, all in all, Sean, like the Bulls then made the most out of their opportunities. Emrose Papier, obviously, pretty much for both of the tries, he sort of snipes, he creates the opportunity, and then it opens up something for a safety Klerk to finish up. So, yeah, I think all around, a lot of the things that you want the Bulls to work for the Bulls did.
Yeah. They were so good. It was a mixed bag because they were exceptionally clinical in a lot of spaces as well. I think, the big thing was there was a lot of I hate saying this because it sounds bad. It sounds like I'm disrespecting other teams or players but it was like their want to be in their desire to be in that gap or be in that space or to make that tackle was there. It was upper level. It's not that the Sharks wasn't there. It was the Bulls. They were constantly chasing. They were constantly doing stuff. Like they were operating at like between 8 and 10 out of 10 the whole game. Like they didn't drop off. It didn't seem that way too much. Like defensively, they really, they grounded out when they were down to 13 for a couple of minutes and then to 14 for much of the game. Like they did it. They did it well. They capitalized on the Sharks' errors, and they knew that the thing is that if you can pressure the Sharks, they will make a mistake. That is the one thing that you know you're going to get, and I think they stuck to that. That was their whole thing. Their whole thing was like go out and do it. Like Jake probably said, like go out and have fun. Like we understand what we need. Houston was having a good game, so just everyone go and do your thing. But whatever you do, you just make sure that you get in their faces afterwards. So whether it's on attack or whether it's on defense or whether it's on scramble, you're in their face. You make sure that they know that you're there all the time. And those dominant tackle stats that you read out, like that answers that question, because a dominant tackle, and everyone remembers the one by de Klerk on Mapimpi, like that. It was the thing is that was one of the best reads and execution I've seen. He actually was shaping to make a tackle on a player, okay, and then like a good 13, he is not overly overcommitted, and then he shot up once he's realized that player is not an option and the ball's going to Mapimpi behind. He's then adjusted and gone and hit Mapimpi. To go and put in a dominant tackle like that on a player of Mapimpi's size, but also after you have come out of that space, you're not coming straight on at him. You've come at an angle. You've made decisions. You might not be properly set. It was huge, massive, massive moment. But there were big hits all round. And the thing is the dominant tackles were ones that matter. They came at vital times and they drove the Sharks back and it broke them.
Yeah, look, I mean, big shout out to the Bulls for that defense. I mean, there's an article on SuperSport right now talking about the defense coaches for the Bulls and for Leinster. Obviously, Leinster have Jacques Nienaber. We all know Jacques Nienaber well. And the Bulls have Jean Tiet, who, he's sort of come up through Puka. He's been with the Bulls set up. And I mean, I would say it's a similar type of rush defense that the Bulls employ. Like it is that sort of umbrella rush. You do have someone like Canan Moody basically defending at 13. And there's a lot of good reads that I think him and de Klerk made on both wings of, you know what, we see the threat out wide. We're going to stop this at or we're going to stop this at the midfielder. And I think that was part of the reason why someone like maybe looked a bit, um, you know, like he wasn't at his best. Why Esthuizen was a bit more neutralized was they stopped those opportunities from really popping off. So yeah, I think the Bulls sort of umbrella rush really worked well. We talked about the scrum. I think Vessels could get in trouble with the wrong ref, though. I must just note that he does sort of, I think, shove a bit early. And Vincent Koch, I think, after the first two or three scrums, said, "Okay, I've got you now. I can work you out." So that'll be interesting what Leinster does with that. Yeah, no, it was a great thing. I think the only sort of negatives were Cam Managum had an injury. He's pretty much ruled out for the final. I think he's also been ruled out of the Springbok squad. So I think Evan Roos has joined the Springbok squad now. And yeah, Shaun, not that I mean, we can talk about we can talk about it in a few moments when we talk about Leinster. I think that makes the Bulls, if it was maybe 55-45, it's almost like a big 5 to 10% swing with not having Cam Managum, considering that there's no Auriglo as well. I don't think Gerard Steenkamp's going to make it this weekend. It does make that bench quite green because, as you saw, even in the second half for this game, there was a bit of a drop off when the bench came on because, yes, the likes of Monroe Smith and Chakweni, they're good players, but they're not necessarily keeping the intensity. Whereas, the Sharks could call on Tunu, who's a Springbok, Emmanuel Chituka, who's been a really good URC player this season. Leinster obviously have Arias Neyman hanging around on the bench. So it is something that the Bulls now, that sort of that lack of depth compared to a Leinster, you lose some of those key Springboks. If Van Staden starts instead of him being an impact player on the bench, and it does go to that third level, and that's going to be something that is a worry for the Bulls, and maybe means now they have to almost go gung-ho in the first 40, 50 minutes to try and build a lead and then sort of cling on for life at the end.
So this is the problem. Leinster are going to be very aware of that. So almost like Bath v Bristol in the Premiership semi-final, one of the best games of rugby I've seen in an age. But Bristol came out that first 40 minutes, it was ridiculous. They were throwing everything everywhere. And I was like, whew, this is going to be quite tough. And then Brian O'Driscoll at halftime said he doesn't think that Bristol have a big enough lead. And it turned out they didn't comfortably. That's the kind of thing, is that Bath were just sitting and waiting, and they knew that Bristol would run out of steam, and then they would just get their bench on and then build momentum and then destroy them. So that's the same thing that's going to happen. Leinster will be like, cool. If you name, I think we're pretty sure that we could name this Bulls side, this run on 15. We could probably name it ourselves. The thing is the bench is where the difference comes. So is Jake going to go and change things around? Like, is he going to try and balance that bench out a little bit by dropping players and just say, listen, this is what your role's going to be, but you've got to come on and you've got to smash it? Or is he going to say, listen, this first 40 is very important? The Bulls do have the ability to score a quick 14 points, but so do Leinster. And Leinster showed against Glasgow that Leinster are happy to keep the machine going and going and going. That's what we're used to seeing from them. So yeah, it's going to be interesting. I would say I would like the Bulls to keep the intensity, especially up front, because I think they've got the backs to go all the way. And then I would probably comfortably go with a 6-2.
Yeah.
I mean, imagine Jake went 7-1. 7-1 would, to be honest, a 7-1, if he's got the personnel, which I think he does, but a 7-1 would be very suitable for him. I don't think Jake will do it, but I think it would be quite suitable with all the players that they've got rolling around. I mean, you can put Papier on the wing. You can, like, the other scrummies can play multiple positions. You've got a couple of options at 10. I think it's might be a shout, but
Yeah.
I think Jake should go 6-2, and I think he needs to look at being competitive up to at least to the 60th minute, and then you've got 20 minutes to hold off. But yeah, I don't think this kind of game plan that they played now is probably the best shout against Leinster. I think you've got to go and get it against Leinster.
Yeah. Look, I think he might have if Huijsen wasn't sort of coming back from injury. If Huijsen was sort of had like a few weeks of form in the tank and you could trust him to go as far into the 80 minutes as possible, I think it would have been a real option. I think now it's a bit more of a risk because you're not quite sure with that knee if he can do 40, 50 minutes. And you, even if there is an early injury, I think that there's almost more of a risk there. But it is a possibility. And maybe just having the fresh legs can just help with sustaining the effort. But yeah, well, I think that's something to talk about. With the Sharks, yeah, I mean, we've talked about the Sharks ad nauseum. Like it is a pretty confusing um team in some senses because you can see the good and you then can just be like, okay, but it's not really progressing too much. Like, I think there's some great individual seasons that certain players had. Ethan Hooker probably had his breakout season. Andre Esterhuizen, he's earned his place, I think, in those like URC teams of the season. I think both the Chituka brothers were fantastic. Vincent has probably put himself in that Springbok sort of level. He's been, like we talked about, the best dealer in the line out. He's really sort of made his impact around. And Emmanuel has been fantastic as an impact player. I thought Buthelezi also has found a role as that sort of impact player. Kolisi has had great parts of the season when once he came back from Paris. Yeah, I think it's been mostly fine. I guess the main issues are you maybe didn't have the format 10 that you wanted from Jordan or Masuku. They weren't as good as they maybe were in previous seasons. And yeah, sometimes when the Sharks had the ball in the second half, you're just like, okay, what's the plan here in attack? Because it did feel like there's a lot of times where people are almost bumping into each other, passes weren't sort of coming to hand. And it was just like, okay, unless you're related to someone in the Sharks, no one is going to really pass to you because it sounds like, okay, the Chitukas are passing to each other, great. Fasi and Mapimpi obviously have an understand they're passing to each other, and then obviously the Hendrickses are passing to each other. But anyone else, I don't know if you're going to get the ball, to be honest.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I really do feel that the Grant Williams injury has
Yeah,
been a massive, massive problem for the Sharks. One is that they're just missing who he is, what he does, and the growth he's made in the last 12 months has been ridiculous. His multi-foot kicking options, his passing is very good, and his running is obviously incredible. And I think that they've lost that, but then that's coincided with Jaden really not being in great form. So Jaden is there because he's a Springbok, he's talented, but he's not in form. So they kind of just got to grind it out, and they don't have any other options at nine. Like they're not willing to try anyone else. Um, so that's the issue. I find that Jaden's passing, like just his target hitting is not great.
yeah,
But he's got a great kick on him, and the thing is ironically, is the best part of Jaden's game is like those times where he's doing like no look passes when there's just a loose ball and he jumps up and he finds something. Like he's got skills for days. He's got skills and he's got the vision, but it's just that ongoing stuff. Like sometimes we just need you to just pass and just hit that target. And I think perhaps with Jordan, who I think's in better form, I think when he was slumping a little bit, like maybe Jaden's like, listen, I've really got to take this, I've got to control this, and then it kind of fizzled out. And so the Sharks definitely was a lot of stop and go from 9 and 10. And it's weird considering you've got 12 that's making the advantage line every time, and you've got like monsters coming around the corner, and then it breaks down so quickly. I mean, even your wingers are making the advantage line. So if you're making the advantage line in the middle, and when you've got some good pick and drive options and your wingers are making the advantage line every time, like there's no excuse for it. Like you are passing to a player that is running from deep, so you should be hitting that target easy, and it just wasn't happening. So the vibe there is gone. Like it's not natural, and that natural comes with form, but it comes with the team being in form. And if the Sharks had played the way they played against the Bulls the week before, the Sharks probably overcome the Bulls this week past, because it's just a little bit more. understanding, a little bit more of this and that. But you've mentioned like there are a lot of players that really performed for the Sharks, but the Sharks didn't perform. It's
Yeah.
weird.
It's a weird, yeah. Like, I think, yeah, I mean, it's easy to bag on the Sharks, and obviously they have a lot of talent, and it should be better than it is. But yeah, I think if you look at certain players, I mean, on a stats level, on an eye test level, there's good performances. I don't think I even mentioned Makazoma Pimpi and Ipelele Fasi. They've been really good. Like, maybe haven't necessarily gotten as much as you want from the front row, but they've been decent. And someone like Faison Bata has grown strength on
Wow.
strength every week, but it's just not coming together. And I think there's problems in attack and there's problems in defense. And yeah, I don't know if that necessarily means Plum and the coaches need to go and all that sort of stuff, but there does need something to be fixed. The problem is half your team, or more than half your team, will now be wearing an ugly shade of green and gold that we saw yesterday in the Springbok training kits.
It's the green and gold Vasco da Gama football team.
Yeah, it's something really ridiculous. Yeah, Nike, we need a statement from Nike. Like, what's happening here? So yeah, and the horrible Pick and Pay logo in the chest also just makes it even worse. But yeah,
Rory Peltzer, he nailed it. He's like, this kit looks like someone needed it ASAP. That's exactly what happened. Someone's like, oh shit, I didn't get this done. Hey, Pick and Pay, do you have some stickers for me? And they were like, yeah, sure, take these.
yeah, I just wanted green and gold. Yeah, we've got something like that. But yeah, so the problem though for the Sharks is you have to wait until what, January to build that momentum again, because a lot of your players will be involved with the Springboks now. So I think we go back to square one again. Again, you need a strong Curry Cup in this off season from the non-Sharks that they can sort of get a team going, like they kind of did last season. Obviously, they won the Curry Cup. Then you need them to hopefully build that sort of like playing style and culture and high standards in having like a much better idea in attack, and not almost like an individual's playing really well and another individual's playing really well, but like combination sort of like going together. And then defensively, just, there's just I don't know if the Sharks defense system is bad or if just they have weak moments, but just too many sort of missed tackles and softer tries that then makes it like, okay, the Sharks have to come back from a 14-point deficit or 21-point deficit in a lot of these games. So yeah, again, for the Sharks, it seems like it's an even bigger Curry Cup campaign. And they have to, I mean, I don't know who's going to be left, but those players have to really come together and be like, okay, well, the big guys are gone. We need to set a standard. And this needs to be the minimum that we're not going to miss. I mean, the tackle completion was in the 60%. So we're not going to miss, almost 30 tackles. We're not going to have issues with building past five phases. We're not going to have these soft moments. We're going to really try and set the standards. And then you Springboks are just almost like the sprinkling on top.
But that's what they did last time. That's the thing. It seems very
Yeah.
much like seems very much like copy paste, and we doing the same shit and hoping for a different outcome. And like I don't know, like I don't know if the Curry Cup is the place for them to build the momentum. Like
Yeah.
why are the standards dropping? Because the standards drop, but why? And if they can find that and figure it out, they need to do it. Like I don't know if they need to balance in more youngsters. I don't know if they maybe need to recruit in a few more positions so they can say like, cool, you are a Springbok, but I'm happy to bench you, or please be comfortable with benching. Everyone's going to spend time on the bench this season because if it's not on, it's not on. Like, I don't know. It's such a tough one. It's the weirdest space because there are so many players, young and Springboky, that are performing well. The Sharks have outperformed, like the trophies they've got versus the way they're performing has been ridiculous in the last two seasons. But there's something horribly wrong, and you just don't know what it is. Like you don't know what it is.
Mm.
Like for me, I really think if we could do the one thing, I think the issue at 9 and 10 is probably something that would fix a lot of problems. But how do you fix that? And then the other issue is the scrum issue. So those are the two major problems to go along with an attitude issue in defense. Like, I don't know. It got into the semi-final, got them a Currie Cup, got them a Challenge Cup final and a win. Like, I don't know, but it seems like there's something weird then. I don't know what it is.
Yeah. Let's move to the other URC semi-final. Leinster, yeah, comfortably thrashed Glasgow. I think it was quite competitive in the first 20, 30 minutes. I mean, Glasgow sort of replied really quickly with their own try when Leinster scored, and it seemed tight. And then at some point, Leinster just turned it on, and Glasgow just weren't really able to live with it. And I mean, just the stats in terms of territory, Leinster had 70% territory for the game. Like, they basically lived in the Glasgow half. They had the ball, and obviously that's how they're able to score 6 tries. And I mean, apart from Glasgow getting a few tries late, and they're probably more on the consolation side once Jordy Barrett comes off the field, which is when Leinster are switching off from the game. Like it,
Or
it
trying to win a
pretty
semi-final.
or it's a Champions Cup final. But yeah, it pretty much felt like Leicester just were able to just dominate the proceedings, keep the ball. Their kicking game was fantastic. They really put pressure on the Glasgow back three and able to retain the ball, get themselves into the half, build phases, and then the opportunities came. Whereas with Glasgow, I think yes, they have a great attack, but I don't think they had really much else. And I mean, okay, let's start with Leinster first. I think probably the best Leinster game since the last time they beat Glasgow by 50 points, basically, in the Champions Cup quarterfinal.
Yeah, it was a great performance. I'm a bit nervous about it just purely from a Bulls perspective. There's something really deep inside of me that doesn't want Leinster to win, as opposed to Bulls winning. I'll be
Well,
honest,
you
like
have a heart, that's why.
yeah, I'm very much like, oh, I just don't want Leinster to win. Bit of a hate watch, but they played well, and that was the thing. Like hate watching Leinster, and then they play like that. You're like, oh, they're gonna win this thing. Like I desperately want to see changes because they haven't delivered. I still don't. I think the URC winning the URC is gonna paper over what other issues they have. But then that just kind of means that everything's gonna be business as usual next year, and then they can go lose some more. I don't know. Hate watch aside, they got through it. They made some changes. They did really well. I I'm a big fan of like when a team plays badly, you must look at the opposition and you've got to give them credit and say like, listen, they played badly because Leinster played well or Leinster stopped them. I just thought that Glasgow made the changes they made in the backline didn't work and they needed to revert them back sooner rather than later. Going back to what we said in the beginning was coaches are quite apprehensive to make changes too early on. But Glasgow needed to make those changes early because the game was getting away from them early. That was the thing. Like it's a semi-final, you're busy losing. Like make some changes and go on and win it. Or if you lose it, it doesn't really matter because it's same. You can say that for the Bulls, sorry, for the Sharks and for Glasgow. But yeah, Leinster played well. It was they looked good. They looked they look different and they've got a vibe about them when they were playing. You're like, this is different. This is not the URC nerves. This is a team that's focused and they're getting back to their old selves and they know that they need to deliver 2 more games and then it's done. They win a title, which is something they haven't been able to do as a group for way too long. And then, they can focus on test match rugby, whether it be for being red or being green. That's just the way it is. So yeah.
Yeah, look, and I think the big thing for Leinster is a lot of the players that came on for the likes of Van der Fleer, Ringrose, Keenan that were not available this weekend, they all stood up. So Jimmy O'Brien had a good game. Tommy O'Brien has probably been the best non-Irish regular for Leinster this season. He's been fantastic. Osborne was good in the centers. Scott Penny did a job there at flank. So those players at least fill those gaps. And obviously it kind of shows that conversation we had earlier about Leicester's third choice players are still Irish internationals or close enough to that level. So they always have good quality and depth. So the problem though for Glasgow is Yeah, I mean, look, they have had a lot of injuries, and even now, still with Tuipulotu and Cummings coming back, they were still missing Hugh Jones. They were still missing Zonda Ferguson and Matt Ferguson and Jack Dempsey. So you still have, 4 or 5, Scottish internationals that you haven't been able to call upon for a lot of the second half of this season. They did, I guess, some ways well to even get to the semi-final, but they just were never really in a good position to defend this. And I mean, yeah, I guess there is a somewhat of a curse, maybe you can call it, on this URC championship, that the next season you're not going to be able to carry the momentum that you had last season. And yeah, I mean, winning a championship is also about having a bit of fortune of all of your players must be available and fit at the right time. Last season, they had, 23, 26 players, and Franco Smith was rotating well, and they all seem to be at top form. And this season, it has been a bit more of holding things together. Maybe you're not wanting to play Josh Mackay at fullback, as much as you did. You want someone like Cancelier coming in. You want a full season of Carl Steyn. You want, Hugh Jones in there. You want maybe to have Tom Jordan at the, I don't know. But those things now sort of do bite into the quality. Like up front, they just weren't able to have much answers for Leinster. And then out wide, I mean, I think, yes, in the second half, there was a few inroads made by Tuipulotu and Jordan and stuff like that, but still not enough.
Yeah. They battled up front. I just actually want to touch on what you spoke about with that Leinster team with a bunch of youngsters. Like both the O'Briens, Osborne, Clarkson, Penny, like they've started them. And yes, a couple of them you can say, listen, they deserve to start, absolutely. But they've started them, and then they've still gone and done that to Glasgow. Like that was huge. Those guys, if you had to look at that team sheet, you'd have been like Glasgow in with a shot, but they just didn't get a chance.
Yeah.
And it was up front. Up front, it damaged them. They were just missing something. I tell you right now, not having Tuipulotu touch the ball as much as he normally does. I don't know how many times he touched it, but not having him do what he does from 12 was probably the error. And the other was having Carl Steyn on the right wing. So when you move to Pilotu, is you will then automatically bring as McDowell back, and he'll go at 13, and that's fine. And then Tom Jordan's going to have to play. So you either start him at 15 or you start him at 10. I think in hindsight, looking back at what happened, 10 would probably be the shout. But they create a lot. Like there's a lot of punch going through their backline. Their backline allows their forwards to get there and have a good game. It's normally the other way around, but their backline really does, because they do create a lot. They're exceptionally skillful. There's some crazy shit that comes off, and then their forwards front foot, and then they just go and they dominate and they churn it out. So ironically, their forwards not working, I really do feel was impacted by how their backline was just not really there. Yeah, it sucks because it was disappointing. Like it was disappointing. The two teams that lost this weekend, it was so disappointing to watch them because we were expecting so much. The Sharks kind of did start performing, but just didn't finish. And then Glasgow just weren't at the races at all. Like I don't even think I properly watched the last 30 minutes of that game. Something happened. Someone was talking about something on social on WhatsApp, and I had to rewind to go back and check it. It was like I was like, no, I'm just not interested. Like I know how the story ends. The story ends with Leinster winning well and going into the final. And I just wasn't too keen to be watching that crap.
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, for Glasgow, the match was pretty much over around the 30th minute, basically. But yeah, once Leinster scored the fourth try before half time, it was like, okay, it's curtains here, it's done. But yeah, I mean, we'll see. I mean, it seems like Josh van der Flier is gonna come back. It seems like Gary Ringrose is coming back, but Hugo Keenan and Tyke Furlong are more unlikely. So, I mean, Van der Flier will help. I think they do need an extra carrier because I think a lot of carrying was on Dan Sheehan this weekend. And Sheehan is a good carrier, but I think he's more out wide a carrier than sort of up through the guts. And Van der
Yeah,
Fleet,
the way he plays, it benefits anyone for him to be carrying in those 5 meter channels, not
yeah.
up close.
Yeah. And I mean, look, shout out to Ryan Bader, who was the man of the match, and he's also a terror out wide as well. So
Love
when
him.
Sheehan and Baird, they're out wide, there's going to be a lot of things for the likes of Moody and de Klerk to sort out there. But yeah, Van der Fleet will help with the carrying. Yeah, I mean, just maybe we can quickly, not a full preview, we'll hopefully do something late in the week, but I think the two areas for this game are going to be interesting are obviously the Bulls have a big advantage with the scrum. And I'm interested to see if Leicester starts Rabah Slimani just to be able to shore up the scrum if Furlong is not available. Then have Clarkson off the bench where, the likes of Matan or probably Chakweni or Matanzima are coming on as the reserve loose head, and you maybe have a bit more of a bailout for him. Then the kicking game, I think, will be the key for this game. Both teams kick the most in the URC. Both have probably some of the best kickers in the URC. Prendergast, James Lowe, Hugo Keenan, Gibson Park. On the other side, the Bulls have LaRue, David Creel, Jan Goosen, Emrys Papier. So if Keenan is there and is able to help with the kicking game, great. But, it does maybe take away from it if it is someone like a Jimmy O'Brien or Jamie Osborne that's playing at fullback. So that I think those are almost like the two things to look out for. Yeah, for you, Shaun, yeah, what do you think is almost like for the Bulls to win, what do they need to sort out on Saturday?
They need to be their defensive selves that we saw now, but a level above. So I wouldn't mind them putting in, like, say, another 5 more dominant tackles in the game, which would be almost unheard of in a full game for those numbers. And the other thing is they have to be exceptionally accurate. And I'm specifically with ball in hand, because you can't be throwing those random balls, because the thing is with Leinster, when they get a turnover ball and it's, say, behind the advantage line, and they manage to pick that, because that pounds pretty quickly on that, they switch on into that conversion of attack so quickly. Their transition is ridiculous, and then they just grind you in the score. When that happens, that forces you to be so careful about what you're doing, because if you make a mistake, it's going to cost you points. And that's the issue. I think the accuracy, I think defensively, if they could pick it up a little bit, it would be great. But defensively, they say the same, it's fine. They just have to be super, super accurate. Those passes have to be perfect. They not be rushed. There will be times where they're rushed because they're going to try and break that rush defense. So they will be rushed. They need to manage that. But if you any drop ball and it's turned over to Leinster, they give it to Lowe, and Lowe thumps it, 50 meters down the field, and then you're back at square one, and you're like, look back up, and you can't even see the posts. They're so far away. You've got to run back at them.
Yeah. Look, yeah, I think both teams kind of want to play without the ball
Mm.
and don't want to play in their own half. Like Leicester, I think the past few seasons, they've now moved to now the more, we're not going to keep the ball in hand. We're not going to try to do the 3-second rucks. We've got, Prendergast here to kick you into your half and to kick it as far as possible. He needs to fix his goal kicking, by the way. Like, as a 2 out of 6 or whatever, what the hell was that? Like, he's just, and he's a good goal kicker. I don't understand why he has these drop-offs sometimes. But yeah, he's there for that. Lowe is there for that, like you've said. I think last year's semi-final in Loftus, I don't think I've seen Villaroo kick better. Like, that's the kind of performance that we need. And yeah, I don't know what the weather's in Dublin's going to be. It's obviously a summer day, but I don't think that matters much in Ireland. But it really needs to be balls on the corners. They're pegging Leinster into the 22. Otherwise, yeah, I think if either team is forced to try and attack from deep, that's not going to be the story that they want. Yes, they have good attackers and they have individuals that can make magic out of nothing, but they want to be in the 22 to force the pressure and you break and then you score the try. So yeah, I mean, I think that's going to be such an interesting chess match. We'll see what happens with selections and which players are fit and available and who's in the 23s. But yeah, look, I think as the Bulls fan, I think Leinster are the favorites. I think it's going to be tough to see the Bulls with some of the injuries that they have. The Bulls need to rest on two things: their scrum and their kicking game. and they need to get Porter yellow carded essentially, I think, in that first half, and that the scrum has to be that dominant. And that is their way to get into the half, get the penalties, get into touch. And then, yeah, I think from there, it's obviously taking those opportunities when they come. And the Bulls have been pretty good with that, at least. Like, they haven't really been too wasteful. Um, and that's the thing. You need to, like, there's many things that you can do to beat Leinster, but I think the main things are once you do get an opportunity to score, you score and you keep that scoreboard pressure, because then the sort of the multi-phase and keeping the ball in hand and that sort of Leinster way of playing, that falls into pressure now that it's okay, we're chasing a 7-pointer here, or okay, we're 12 points behind. So I think if the Bulls can just keep on chugging the points along, accumulating as much as possible, and then if it's the last 13 minutes, yes, you have the Leinster sort of bench coming on, but they're like, oh, we're chasing 10 points down or 5 points down. Then the pressure comes back on them.
Yeah, it's so good. You know what I'd be interested to see is you're so bang on with that kicking game. Maybe the Bulls are going to try and manufacture something. They're going to have to do something to trigger those outside backs to shoot, and then you got to kick. That's the whole thing, like you can't kick too early because they're going to be back to cover. So you really want to trigger those outside backs to make that move. And then just before that cross cover comes, you've got to pump that into the corner. And then you just got to put pressure at them at lineouts and more time and get them to stuff up their kick, their exit. That's really the plan, because then you have 20 in their 22 attack and you manufacture something where there's 3 points or a try.
Yeah. Sean, yeah, I know you're going to leave us quite soon, so I'm just going to quickly go to the Premiership. Any reason for you as a Bath fan to be worried about Leicester Tigers in the final?
It's a final, firstly. Secondly, Handré Pollard is in great form, and so are Leicester, to be fair. It's going to be a completely different game because, Bristol were just swinging around. It's going to be probably one of the closest test match battles we're going to see in a final, even and with the URC, like both of them, but Premiership very much so. Leicester, big forwards. They like to truck it up. They've got a good kicking and running 10. Yeah, it's gonna be epic. I'm nervous, but it's gonna be epic, absolutely epic. And the thing is I think Leicester, there's a lot of their players and a lot of their game that is really on form now, where Bath have just been cruising the whole way. They've been doing what they're doing, where Leicester have been building up and adding a few extras and this and that. And Chakers, he's crazy, man. Johan van Kraan and Michael Chaker against each other is an epic battle on his own.
What a wily coach. But yeah, I think I saw a bit of the Leicester game, obviously going in between the two games. Pollard and Van Poortvliet are playing really well and just putting their sides in the right places. Kata was just, you know, making those big runs into it. I liked Woodward. He's a nice young player. Radwan was obviously fantastic. And that second try, the cross kick, I don't think it was a great cross kick from Pollard. I mean, Pollard's reaction to the try sort of belies that. He was just like, oh my gosh, I can't believe he even got to that. But it just shows how fast he is. Like, he sort of just kind of like a quarterback in the NFL, just threw the ball there and just hoping that the wide receiver just gets to it. And that's kind of what he did. So he's obviously just a dangerous finisher. And look, the Leicester Tigers scrum isn't maybe as good as Bath, as much depth as Bath, but geez, Nicky Smith is fantastic. Joe Hayes is an English international. Julian Montoya is fantastic. So, you know, it does kind of nullify some of the things that Bath has. So yeah, I think this is probably high key. I mean, the Bulls Leicester game will be fantastic, I think, as well. But this could be the game or the final of the weekend for sure, because it really is going to be high quality teams, relatively deep teams. I wish George Martin was playing. Obviously, he's not available. Like, these teams are going to really go hammer tongs at it.
Yeah. I wouldn't be surprised if Parisi starts.
Yeah, he was great with the bench.
Your first touch and he goes and scores that try. But to be fair, the Leicester Tigers bench made a difference when they came on. I mean, that was Ben Volavola's first or second touch, and he put Parisi away for his first touch. He went like 30, 40 meters to score. So, that was huge. Kata's the guy has been trying so hard. I kept thinking this guy's either going to get a red card or he's going to get into form because he was flying into tackles. Like he put in a couple of suspect tackles, but it's not like it's just that he's like just hungry to get in there and just absolutely smoke guys. And he takes that same thing over onto attack. But he's in form and it's good. And they seem to have balanced it out nicely. Freddie Stewart, brilliant. He's really good. Ben Young's coming off the bench, made a great impact, and it's huge. It's huge. Interested to see how this gets on. The loose trio battle alone is going to be huge.
Mm.
Like it's going to be just juicy. Both the benches are really good. Um, Thank goodness it's not at the same time. The one's at 4 and the other one's at 6. So no extra
Yeah.
time. And, we've got a good 4 hours of runners, So it's going to be good. And Emeka Ilioni, that kid, love him. Love him. Makes a difference. Whenever I see him come on, he does something good. Like he stops something or he makes a break. There's one moment that he always delivers for his team when he comes on.
Yeah, no, it's going to be, I think it's something to look forward to for sure. Sean, let's let you go. I know you have another engagement, so I'll just quickly wrap up and just talk about the weekend's games. So yeah, like so I'll talk through the Premiership and everything as well. So first of all, Leicester wins 21-16 against Sale, just a really tight game. Um, I think, yeah, we need to talk about Sale as a bit of a choking team. Like they just always have this situation where they get to the semi-finals, they get to the knockouts, they don't really produce. But yeah, Leicester just had, I think, enough of that sort of test match quality in order to take it through. Yeah, big performances, I think, from Hazen Smith. I mean, we've talked, I think, through a lot of the players that really stood up for them. Henry Liebenberg, I think, was great. Ollie Chesham, I think, is in really good form. And they were just able just to sort of, as much as Sale was, made threats to come back, Leicester were just able to keep themselves ahead. So yeah, that's going to be a really good game. Bath, they just, I think, tired out Bristol 34-20. I think Pat Lab's words were kind of true at the start, had a bit of a lead there at the start, but then Bath was just able to just, be like, okay, it's fine. We'll take them at the end. And just that Bath bench is just really crazy. So that's going to be a big battle, I think, in this final. Kind of like last year's final with Northampton and Bath, where it was kind of won by Northampton's bench. It really will be how Bath can really turn it on, having the likes of Thomas Tutore and Ross Maloney and Josh Bayless coming in at the end versus with the Tigers. We talked about Ilioni, we talked about Parisi, we talked about Dan Cole and Ben Youngs. Like, who of those players are going to make the impact and sustain the intensity there? So Premiership final to look forward to. Let's quickly go to Super Rugby. So Crusaders beat the Red 32-12. That wasn't too much of a surprise. Yeah, I mean, the big surprise with the Blues beating the Chiefs 20 points to 19. And just like Shaun was talking about earlier, a bit of a surprise because it felt like the Chiefs had that game sewn up, I think, with 20 minutes to go. Um, I think it was the try scored by Daniel Rona, like in the last 20 minutes. You're just like, okay, there's a lead now for the Chiefs. I think they had like a 6 or 8 point lead. It felt like, okay, the Chiefs can sort of get, actually, I think it was more than 6 or 8 points, but it felt like, okay, the Chiefs have done what they need to do. They can maybe get a penalty or two and the game is gone. But the Blues just didn't give up. So credit to them. They showed, the heart of the champion. But yeah, it was just, I don't know if it's because the Chiefs knew that they didn't necessarily have to win this game, so they didn't really keep the intensity, or if it's just the Blues just really coming into form and quality and just keeping at it for them. I think the Chiefs really missed Quinn Tupaia and just having that ability to get over the advantage line, especially in the first half, and they had all those opportunities, but just weren't really putting themselves in a position to score. The Blues, they just made so many mistakes early on. I mean, they defended well, and then when they did get the ball, end of the first half, during the second half, they botched a few tries. I think both teams botched some really like key opportunities to score. And yeah, but I think for the Blues, they were just able to keep at it. they had, I think, the quality of the bench to keep the intensity, and then they were able to come through. Big match for Beauden Barrett believers. If you think he should still be the All Black 10, I think he really outperformed Daniel McKenzie, and just making sure that, he puts the team in the right position. He is able, Damien McKenzie, I should have said, he kicks well, he's distributing well, he's keeping sort of the tempo for the team. And I mean, he almost scored like one of the better individual tries, but then he just botched it, knocking it on the try line. So yeah, Beauden Barrett was fantastic. Klerk was contributing. I think Rico Ioane got into the game later. Hoskins Sotutu was also good. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see how they go next week. The Blues then qualify, and they have a semi-final at Christchurch. The Chiefs will be hosting the Brumbies. They beat the Hurricanes 35-28. Nice clash of styles. Hurricanes just had the back line that was able to open the Brumbies up and get them and get those opportunities, get the tries. The Brumbies were just able to, just munch the Hurricanes up front with their scrum, with their rolling wall, and able to create opportunities in that way. So yeah, big games from, I think, the internationals. Rob Valentini and Lenny Kitau were great. I think especially Rob Valentini, like the try that he created for Tom Wright. The Brumbies sort of did these teams like Ireland have like moves off dropouts, of goal line dropouts, where they crash up in the first phase and then just set up a shape in the second phase to exploit the defense. And it was a nice little variation of like the moves that we've seen from Ireland and from Joe Schmidt in the past. This time, Rob Valentini pops the ball out to someone to crash it up. And then the second phase, Rob Valentini's the one with the ball, but he's the one that people are running off of. And then he just makes an amazing pass as he's basically being tackled to Tom Wright, and Tom Wright basically could go in untouched. And that was basically the difference in this game. I think the Canes were doing quite well, but once it got to that 14-point lead, there was too much for the Canes to do. Then it didn't feel like they were able to play the natural game and sort of let the game come to them. They're chasing it, and like Shaun likes to say, they're sort of grabbing at it, and that's when the mistakes came. But yeah, I think for the Brumbies, it's about the set piece. It's about that tight five standing up. The Slippers, the Alatoas, the Frost, the Hoopers, they need big games against the Blues. I mean, against the Chiefs. Rob Valentini will be doing his thing. And then on the back line, they just should not let in the tries that they did. I think there was a bit of a problem in defense. I don't know if Feliani was where he should have been in some of the defensives, in some of the tries there. And I don't know if the Brumbies have it to beat the Chiefs away from home. I mean, the Chiefs also will be smarting from the defeat against the Blues. Yeah, again, this format doesn't make sense because it can't be that a team that lost a qualifier can still host the semi-final. It should be that you now are the last ranked team because you're the first loser, and then that means the Brumbies or even the Blues should be the ones hosting the second semi-final. So if it was Brumbies hosting the Blues in Canberra, or the Brumbies hosting the Chiefs in Canberra, I might have maybe predicted the Brumbies, even though I think the Chiefs would still have been like a slight favorite. We saw how the Brumbies got close to the Crusaders at home. But away from home, the Brumbies have done this before. They have gone away from home and kept it close. But yeah, it doesn't seem like they would have enough to beat the Chiefs. So I don't know if that's going to be, if they are able to do that. So that's the semi-finals to look forward to. Crusaders, Blues. I think we'll probably do a preview later. But yeah, the Blues have a lot of form now and a lot of momentum. But yeah, I can maybe see the Blues actually getting one over the Crusaders in Christchurch. But I can't see the Brumbies beating the Chiefs in Hamilton. If they do, the scrum needs to be ascendant. I assume Wallace Atiti will start because he's now had a few weeks sort of coming back. So that impact from the loose forwards needs to be strong. Valentine needs to outplay the likes of Satiti and Finau, who was really great defensively for the Chiefs in this game. And then the backline, I think, just needs to be able to take the opportunities when they come. They need some magic from the likes of Muirhead and Tom Wright and Corey O'Toole. Yeah, but I don't know if that's going to be enough because, yeah, the the Chiefs have been the quality side for the whole season. So why would they stop now? Well, I don't know if this loss will be enough to let them go. Then going to France, first of all, let's talk Pro League 2 because we have our champion. We have Mountaban, who has defeated Grenoble in the final, which means that they're the first team to go from sixth in the playoffs for the Pro League 2 and winning the competition. So they sort of did it the hard way. They beat Grenoble. Grenoble again, I think it's the third final on the road that they've lost. So that's congratulations to Scumbuzo Noche, who's qualified with Mountaban to make it to the top 14. Yeah, just brilliant from them. I don't think they're like a really big team, but yeah, just big congratulations that they're able to go all the way there. Grenoble now will be facing Perpignan for their playoff match this week, so that'll be big. And then the top 14, yeah, that was the last weekend. I was able to watch it from the Canal Plus broadcast, where they had that sort of like multi-view of all the games, and they go to each ground as something happens or try or a controversial incident or whatever the case is. It's a really exhilarating experience. Obviously, seeing the live vlog and seeing, okay, this means that this team is into the barrage, this team is in qualification for Europe, or this team's now in the relegation zone. So I think it's a great way of showing these types of games. The big winners for the weekend are, I think, Castro is able to get into the top six. Bayonne was able to keep themselves in the top four. Clermont beats Montpellier, which means they also got into the top six. Big losers are La Rochelle. They got themselves in the top six for the last few weeks, but they fall out in the last week because they weren't able to beat Po, who also are a winner because they qualify for Europe and for the Champions Cup, I think, for the first time. Stade Francais was able to do enough. They stave off, the fears of being relegated, so they are automatically in for next season. We talked about a few weeks ago, the consequences for Stade looked like that they could have possibly been sold, and players didn't necessarily have a relegation clause, so it could have been this big fire sale of players. So I think this is a massive win for Stade. I mean, it's not good because there is going to be a team relegated, and that's one. And they weren't able to do enough against Bordeaux, who pretty much played their first team and absolutely thrashed Van. For Stade, I think it's a good thing they were able to at least to qualify, and hopefully they can just rebuild from next season and find the solutions, because they went from pretty much finishing second in last year's top 14 to almost finishing in relegation. But Perpignan, they beat Toulouse, but that wasn't enough. Because of the Stade win, they are into the barrage qualification against Grenoble. And so next week in the barrage, we have Bayonne hosting Clermont on the Friday night, and then Toulon hosting Castres. It's tough to see. I mean, Castres is the ultimate shit houses, but it's tough to see them beating Toulon. I think Toulon, yes, they lost the last game against Bayonne, but I think they sort of were keeping their powder dry in preparation for this game, even though it seemed like they did start a lot of their key players. I think they kind of were playing that as almost like a shadow game for next week. But we'll see. I mean, stranger things have happened, and Castres does love a run into the late stages of the season. The Bayern Clermont ones are interesting. I think both teams haven't had much success in the top 14 in the last few seasons, especially Bayern. So it'd be great to see if they can get semi-finals. And then they will play Toulouse. The winner of Bayern Clermont plays Toulouse in the semi-final next week, and the winner of Toulon and Castres plays Bordeaux in the semi-final. So that is something to look forward to. Otherwise, a few news items. We talked about Evan Reyes coming in. We talked about the Springbok kit and how horrible it is. I think the big Lions news is that Zander Ferguson has been ruled out. Finlay Bealham is going to come into the squad for the Lions. I mean, that's a good replacement. Ferguson wasn't able to shake off I think it's the calf injury that he's had for the last few months. It doesn't seem like he maybe recovered during July, but I don't think he would have been able to play like the first tour matches. So he's been ruled out for that. So that's unfortunate for him. But Bealham is quality. I think he's really good. but it does raise a big question for the Lions because the tight head depth after that, because I think you could have thrown a blanket over Ferguson, Bealham, Stewart, and Furlong in terms of quality and experience and everything. But now, if Furlong is not able to shake off the injuries that he's had the last 2 or 3 seasons, what do you do? So I see Asha Pokofojo has been added to the training squad for the upcoming Lions game against Argentina, I think in 2 weeks or less than 2 weeks now. Is he the next cab off the rank for tight head? I mean, he's great. He's a very nice raw prospect, but he's very inexperienced. So that is then becomes a problem for the Lions because they do then get into a problem where with the depth and at loose and at tight head, and that's someone that's going to be facing Angus Bell and James Slipper. So you need as much quality there as possible. So they are, I think Andy Farrell's really hoping that Ty Furlong is able to get past his injury and be able to hopefully join the Lions when they get on the plane to Australia. Yeah, so that's gonna be something to watch out for. So I think we can end it there. Yeah, there's a lot of squads announced. There's going to be a lot of previews also for this, but I think we'll try to record something late in the week, where we do preview the URC final, talk a little bit Premiership final, maybe talk about the other knockout games happening in the top 14 and Super Rugby. See what's going to happen. We can maybe look through stats and game styles and try to sort of see what the teams do. Hopefully the teams I think will probably announce around Thursday or maybe Friday. So we can do that around Thursday. And yeah, then we can talk about this and see what we can expect from the two teams. But let's end it there. Thank you so much for listening to this Rugby Biz podcast. Yeah, a little bit from me at the end with Shaun falling, having to leave early. Hope you enjoyed at least this breakdown. Yeah, please follow us on our podcast platforms. Please like, share, and subscribe to this podcast on whichever podcast platform that you use. Make sure you share this Rugby Gospel with everyone else. And please follow us on our social media channels to keep up with any of the news updates that are happening around the rugby world. And yeah, thank you so much for listening. We will see you again, hopefully later this week when we do a preview. All the best to everyone. Yeah, if there's any Bulls fans that are traveling to Dublin, let us know. We'd love to hear what your experience is of that. And yeah, we will see you again later this week. Bye-bye.